The cargo ship docked at Haven's edge with a soft thud that echoed through the metal corridors. Daehoon stretched his arms above his head and yawned. It had been a long flight from Earth. 3 weeks of nothing but stars and the hum of engines. He grabbed his bag from the pilot's seat and headed toward the airlock. Haven's edge was one of the biggest trading stations in the Outer Rim. Humans called it neutral ground. Here, species from all over the galaxy came to buy, sell, and make deals. The station was massive, with docking bays that could hold 100 ships and markets that stretched for miles. Daehoon had been here dozens of times. He knew the layout, knew which restaurants served decent food, and knew which areas to avoid when tensions ran high. Today felt different, though. The moment he stepped into the main corridor, he noticed it. The usual noise of the station was muted. Aliens moved quickly, keeping their heads down. Security drones floated past more frequently than normal. Something was going on. Daehoon made his way to the cargo processing center. His shipment was already being unloaded by the station's robotic systems. Medical supplies, food rations, and equipment for the human research team stationed here. Standard stuff. He signed the digital manifest and started walking toward the residential sector. That was when he saw Hyojin rushing toward him. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. They had met on his last supply run and shared a few meals. She was smart, always asking questions about the different species he encountered during his travels. "Daehoon," she called out, a bit breathless. "You need to hear this." He stopped and waited for her to catch up. "What's wrong?" "The Draken are here," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening too closely. A full delegation. They arrived 2 days ago. Daehoon raised an eyebrow. "Draken? That's unusual." "Unusual? It's unprecedented," Hyojin said. "They almost never come to trading stations. They usually send intermediaries. But this time, they sent high-ranking military officers. Something big is happening." The Draken were known throughout the galaxy. They looked like dragons from old Earth legends, massive creatures covered in scales with wings that could span 15 feet. They had sharp claws, powerful jaws, and a reputation that made most species nervous. They were apex predators, the kind of species that evolved at the very top of their planet's food chain. But that was not what made them truly dangerous. The real problem was the blood frenzy. If a Draken smelled blood, something in their brain triggered. Their pupils would dilate, their scales would darken, and they would enter a state of violent rage. In that state, they attacked anything that moved. Friend or foe, it did not matter. The frenzy turned them into killing machines. Because of this, there were strict protocols whenever Draken were present. No one was allowed to have fresh meat. No one could be injured. Medical bays were sealed off. Even a small cut could trigger a disaster. "So everyone's being careful," Daehoon said. "Careful? The entire station is on lockdown protocols," Hyojin replied. "No raw food in public areas. Medical emergencies have to be handled in sealed rooms. Security is everywhere. One mistake, and this place could turn into a bloodbath." Daehoon nodded slowly. He had heard the stories. Entire space stations evacuated because someone got a nosebleed near a Draken. Trade negotiations had ended in disaster because a chef served rare meat at a diplomatic dinner. The Draken themselves hated it. They had developed technology and culture to control their instincts, but biology was hard to fight. "I'll be careful," Daehoon said. Hyojin looked at him with concern. "I'm serious. These aren't just any Draken. One of them is a Talon commander named Arwax. He's high up in their military. And there's another one, Velcro's. He's younger, but still dangerous. Just stay away from the diplomatic wing, okay?" "Sure," Daehoon said with a small smile. "I'm just here to drop off supplies and grab some rest. No diplomatic incidents planned." Hyojin seemed somewhat reassured. She squeezed his arm. "Good. I have to get back to the lab. We're analyzing some samples, and I'm already late. Let's have dinner later?" "Sounds good," he replied. She hurried off, disappearing into a crowd of aliens moving to the corridor. Daehoon continued toward the residential sector. His quarters were small but comfortable, the standard accommodation for visiting pilots. He dropped his bag on the bed and looked around. Everything was exactly as he left it last month. His stomach growled. The nutrient bars on the ship were fine for survival, but now that he was on the station, he wanted real food. He opened his bag and pulled out a small cooling container. Inside was a beautiful piece of steak he had brought from Earth. Real beef, expensive and rare out here in the Outer Rim. He had been saving it for this moment. Daehoon headed to the common area, a large space where pilots and traders could eat and relax. It was mostly empty, probably because of the Draken situation. Perfect. He liked quiet. He found a table near the window that looked out into space. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions. He unpacked his meal and set up a small portable heater. Within minutes, the steak was sizzling. He liked it rare, cooked just enough to warm the outside, but still red and juicy in the middle. The smell filled the air. Rich, meaty, delicious. Daehoon cut into the steak and took his first bite. Blood pooled on his plate. He closed his eyes and savored the taste. After 3 weeks of processed food, this was heaven. He was halfway through his meal when he felt it. A presence. The kind of awareness that comes from years of military training. Someone was watching him. Daehoon looked up. Standing in the doorway was a Draken. He was massive, easily 9 feet tall. His scales were a deep red color that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights. His wings were folded against his back, but Daehoon could see the powerful muscles beneath. The Draken's eyes were fixed on him. More specifically, fixed on his plate. The entire common area went silent. A few aliens who had been sitting at other tables quietly stood up and backed toward the exits. Daehoon could see security cameras swiveling to focus on the scene. The Draken's nostrils flared. His pupils began to dilate. The scales around his neck started to darken from red to a deep crimson, almost black. Daehoon recognized the signs. This was the beginning of blood frenzy. Somewhere in the station, alarms were probably going off. Security forces were likely mobilizing. Protocols were being activated. Everyone would be expecting violence. Daehoon looked at the Draken, then at his steak, then back at the Draken. He set down his knife and fork carefully. The Draken's claws extended slowly, scraping against the metal doorframe. Daehoon picked up his glass of water and took a sip. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. Then he looked directly at the Draken and spoke in a calm, friendly voice. "Oh, hey there. Want to join me? I've got extra." The Draken froze. His head tilted slightly, like he was not sure he had heard correctly. The darkening of his scales paused. His claws remained extended, but he did not move forward. Daehoon gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Seriously, I always pack too much. There's another steak in my bag. You hungry?" For a long moment, nothing happened. The Draken stood in the doorway, his predatory instincts warring with confusion. Every species in the galaxy knew to run from a Draken, showing signs of frenzy. Fear was a natural response. Panic was expected. But this human was not running. He was not even nervous. He was offering to share his meal. The blood frenzy hesitated, caught off guard by something it had never encountered before. A prey species with absolutely no fear. The Draken named Velcro stood frozen in the doorway. His mind was screaming at him to attack. The smell of blood filled his nostrils. Every instinct in his body demanded violence. His scales continued to darken. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. But the human just sat there, calmly cutting another piece of steak. Velcros had been trained since childhood to control the blood frenzy. Every Draken went through years of mental conditioning. They learned meditation techniques, breathing exercises, and ways to redirect their aggression. But all that training was based on one simple principle. Remove yourself from the source of blood immediately. Running away was not shameful for a Draken. It was survival. It was responsible. When the frenzy began, a Draken left before they hurt someone. But this human was not running. He was not even standing up. He was just sitting there, eating like nothing was wrong. The confusion broke through Velcro's rising frenzy like cold water. His predatory instincts could not process this. Prey was supposed to run. That was how it worked. The chase triggered the kill. But there was no chase. There was just a human, sitting calmly, offering food. "I'm Daehoon," the human said, still in that same relaxed tone. "You must be with the Draken delegation. Long trip from your homeworld, I bet." Velcro's claws slowly retracted. The darkening of his scales stopped, then began to reverse. The red color returned, lighter now, less aggressive. He took a step back from the doorway and sucked in a deep breath through his mouth instead of his nose. Less blood smell that way. "You are not afraid," Velcro said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Daehoon shrugged. "Should I be?" "I was entering blood frenzy." "You saw it." "Yeah, I noticed," Daehoon said. He picked up his glass of water again. "But you stopped, so everything's fine." Velcro stared at him. In his 3 decades of life, he had never encountered anything like this. Every species he had ever met showed fear around Draken, even the warrior races, the ones who could fight back, still had that edge of nervousness in their eyes. Fear was universal. It was basic biology, except apparently not for humans. Security forces arrived. 6 of them, all armed with weapons designed to take down large creatures. They pointed their guns at Velcros, but did not fire. The lead officer, an insect-like alien called a Vrin, clicked its mandibles nervously. Step away from the human, the officer ordered. Daehoon waved his hand dismissively. It's fine. We're just talking. Sir, protocol requires. Protocol can wait. Daehoon interrupted. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's in danger. Right? He looked at Velcros. Velcros nodded slowly. Correct. I am in control. The security officers did not lower their weapons, but they did not advance either. They stood there, uncertain, waiting to see what would happen next. Daehoon turned back to his meal. He cut another piece of steak, blood dripping from the meat, and ate it, right in front of a Draken who had almost entered a killing frenzy moments ago. The security officers tensed, but Velcros did not react. He just watched, fascinated. You have encountered Draken before, Velcros said. It was not a question. Yeah, Daehoon replied between bites. Few years back, military operation, joint rescue mission on a mining colony that got hit by raiders. Velcros moved slowly into the room, keeping his movements careful and deliberate. The security officers tracked with their weapons, but they did not interfere. He sat down at the table across from Daehoon, his large frame making the chair look like a toy. Tell me, Velcros said. Daehoon set down his fork and leaned back. It was bad. The raiders had hit the colony hard. Lots of wounded. Your people sent a squad to help with the rescue, and so did we. I was a medic back then. He paused, remembering. There was this one Draken soldier, young guy, probably around your age. He took shrapnel to the leg. Bad wound, lots of blood. I was trying to stabilize him. But I could see it happening. His scales started darkening. His eyes got that look, you know? Velcros nodded. He knew that look very well. Everyone else pulled back. Daehoon continued. Even his own squad mates. Standard procedure. But I was right in the middle of treating him, and there were 3 other wounded people who couldn't be moved. So I just kept working. You stayed? Velcros asked, leaning forward. Didn't have much choice. Moving would have meant those people died. Daehoon shrugged. Besides, I was hungry. Had my lunch, sitting right there next to my medical kit. So I kept bandaging his leg with one hand and eating a sandwich with the other. Velcros' eyes widened. You were eating during a medical emergency, while Draken was entering blood frenzy beside you. Yeah, Daehoon said simply. Like I said, I was hungry. Long day. What happened? He calmed down. Took about 10 minutes. He kept looking at me, getting more and more confused. I think his brain couldn't decide if I was prey or not. I mean, prey runs, right? But I was just sitting there, eating a sandwich, tying bandages. Eventually, the confusion was stronger than the frenzy. He got control back. Velcro sat back in his chair, his tail swishing slowly behind him. That should not have worked. But it did, Daehoon pointed out. The door burst open again. This time, a much larger Draken entered, followed by Hyojin and several station officials. The new Draken wore armor marked with military insignia. His scales were darker than Velcro's, a deep bronze color, and his eyes were sharp and calculating. Velcros, the older Draken barked. Report. Velcro stood immediately and saluted. Talon Commander RYX. I entered the common area and detected blood. I began to experience the early stages of frenzy, but I maintained control. No hostile action was taken. Commander, RYX looked at Daehoon, then at the plate of bloody steak, then back at Velcro's. You maintain control in the presence of fresh blood? Yes, sir. How? Velcro's hesitated. I do not fully understand myself, Commander. The human showed no fear response. His calmness was absolute. It created confusion that disrupted the frenzy cycle. Hyojin pushed past the officials and rushed to Daehoon's side. Are you insane? She hissed. Do you have any idea how close you came to dying? I'm fine, Daehoon said. See? Not a scratch. That's not the point. Commander RYX approached the table slowly. He was even larger than Velcro's, his presence filling the room. The security officers backed away, giving him space. He stopped a few feet from Daehoon and studied him carefully. You are human. RYX said. That's right, Daehoon replied. Your species is classified as non-threatening, physically weak, no natural weapons, slow compared to most galactic species, fragile. RYX tilted his head. So why do you not fear us? Daehoon thought about it for a moment. Fear's not really useful when you have work to do. I mean, I could be scared, sure, but that wouldn't change the situation, wouldn't make me safer, wouldn't help anyone. So why bother? You intellectualize your fear response, RYX said slowly. You acknowledge it exists, but you choose not to act on it. I guess so, Daehoon said. Never really thought about it that way. Hyojin jumped in, her scientist brain taking over despite her worry. Commander, if I may, humans evolved differently than most species. We were not apex predators on our world. We were prey for millions of years. But we survived through cooperation and tool use, not through individual strength or fear responses. Prey that does not flee? RYX murmured. This is unprecedented. Our fear responses are there, Hyojin continued, but we learn to suppress them for the good of the group. A human can be terrified and still function. We call it courage, but really it is just the ability to act despite fear. Velcro spoke up. Commander, I have never experienced anything like this. Every species we have encountered reacts with fear to blood frenzy. It is universal. Even species that could defeat us in combat still show the fear response. But this human treated it as a minor inconvenience. RYX circled the table slowly, his eyes never leaving Daehoon. What does your species use to suppress Draken blood frenzy? What technology? What chemicals? Nothing, Daehoon said. I was just eating lunch. Impossible, but true, Daehoon replied with a slight smile. RYX stopped pacing. He looked at a subordinate, then at the human, then at the plate of bloody meat still sitting on the table. Finally, he spoke. I wish to understand humans better. This may be important for the negotiations. Velcros, you will study this human. Learn how this is possible. Yes, Commander, Velcro said. RYX turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Human, what is your name? Daehoon. Daehoon, RYX repeated, as if testing the sound. You're either very brave or very foolish. I have not decided which. Maybe a bit of both, Daehoon said. After RYX left, the tension in the room finally broke. The security officers lowered their weapons and started filing out. Hyojin collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking from the adrenaline. Velcros remained seated across from Daehoon. Your offer of food earlier, he said quietly. Was it sincere? Yeah, Daehoon replied. He reached into his bag and pulled out another steak, still in its cooling container. Here, you'll have to cook it yourself, though. I only brought one heater. Velcros took the package carefully, his claws delicate despite their size. He stared at it for a long moment. Thank you, he said finally. This is very strange. What is? Sharing a meal with prey. Daehoon smiled. Well, that's your first mistake. I'm not prey. I'm just a guy with a steak. The next morning, Daehoon woke up to find a message waiting for him. Commander, RYX wanted to meet with all humans on the station. It was not a request. It was an order, though politely worded. Hyojin knocked on his door an hour later. She looked tired, like she had not slept much. Did you get the message? Yeah, Daehoon said, pulling on his jacket. Any idea what this is about? They won't understand us. Apparently, what you did yesterday has the entire Draken delegation talking. They've never seen anything like it. She paused. They're scared of us, Daehoon. Scared? Of humans? He laughed. We're probably the weakest species on this station. Physically, yes, but they don't understand how our minds work. And that scares them more than any weapon. They walked together to the conference room in the diplomatic wing. It was a large space with a long table and chairs designed to accommodate different body types. Already present were 3 other humans from the station. There was Minji, an engineer who kept the human quarters running smoothly. She was young, fresh out of training, and excited about everything. Next to her sat Jaiwan, head of human security for the station. He was former military like Daehoon, quiet and observant. The last human was Sungo, a trader who specialized in human goods. Commander RYX stood at the head of the table with Velcros beside him. 2 other Draken were also present, both wearing the armor of military advisors. Thank you for coming. RYX began. His voice was formal, measured. I will be direct. We do not understand your species. This concerns us. Jaiwan leaned back in his chair. You're not the first to say that, Commander. Perhaps not. But we are the first who need to understand for diplomatic reasons. The Draken Collective is considering a trade alliance with humanity. However, we cannot ally with a species we do not comprehend. Yesterday's incident demonstrated how different your psychological responses are from every other known species. Hyojin stepped forward. I could provide some context, if it would help. I'm a xenobiologist. I study how different species evolved and why they behave the way they do. RYX gestured for her to continue. Hyojin activated a holographic display. An image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme competition. We were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most well-armed. We had no claws, no venom, no thick armor. For millions of years, we were prey. The display shifted to show various Earth predators. Lions, bears, crocodiles, snakes. The Draken watched carefully. But we survived through two advantages. Hyojin continued. First, endurance. We could run for hours, days even, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Second, cooperation. We hunted in groups, shared resources, and protected each other. A single human is weak, but a group of humans is formidable. Velcro spoke up. But this does not explain the lack of fear response. Actually, it does. Hyojin said, fear is useful for an individual trying to survive. But for a group, fear can be a liability. If one hunter runs away, the entire hunt fails and everyone starves. So humans evolved to suppress fear when the group needs them. We can be terrified and still function because the alternative is that everyone suffers. Minji raised her hand like she was in school. Can I add something? RYX nodded. Humans do crazy stuff for fun, Minji said cheerfully. We jump out of airplanes. We climb mountains that could kill us. We eat food so spicy it causes physical pain. We literally do dangerous things because we think it's entertaining. The Draken exchanged glances. One of the advisors made a note on a datapad. This seems illogical, RYX said slowly. Oh, it totally is, Minji agreed. But that's kind of our thing. We like pushing boundaries. Sungo chimed in. It's good for business, though. Other species pay a lot for human entertainment content. Apparently watching us do dangerous things is fascinating to them. Commander, RYX turned to Daehoon. You are former military. You have been trained. Is this why you did not fear Velcros? Partially, Daehoon said. But honestly, I've seen Draken before. I knew Velcros could control himself if given a chance. Running away or panicking would have made it worse. Staying calm gave him something to focus on besides the blood. You gamble with your life on the assumption that a Draken in blood frenzy would choose reason over instinct. I guess so. Daehoon shrugged. RYX was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. I want to test you. All of you. I want to see if this human fearlessness is real or just an anomaly. Are you willing? The humans looked at each other. Jaiwin spoke first. What kind of tests? Nothing that will cause permanent harm. But we want to see how you respond to threats, to predators, to situations that should trigger fear responses. Like a psychology experiment? Hyojin asked. Precisely. Daehoon shrugged. I'm in. Sounds interesting. One by one, the others agreed. Even Minji, who was the least experienced, nodded enthusiastically. The test began that afternoon. The Draken had set up a special chamber with safety barriers and observation windows. They brought in different creatures, all known for triggering fear in other species. First was a Kresh, a serpent-like alien with venomous fangs and the ability to expand its hood. It was kept behind a transparent barrier. The Kresh hissed and struck at the barrier repeatedly. Minji walked up to the barrier and examined the creature closely. Fascinating. The venom sacs are visible under the skin. Can I take a sample later? The Draken observers made notes. Next was a Thornback, an armored creature covered in spikes that could shoot from its body like projectiles. It was aggressive, slamming itself against its containment field. Jaiwin watched it with professional interest. What's the effective range on those spikes? Approximately 15 meters, one of the Draken advisors answered. Good to know, Jaiwin said. We should update security protocols. More notes were made. The third test was different. They brought out a creature called a Mind Dripper. It was small, almost fragile looking, but it had psychic abilities. It could project fear directly into the minds of other beings. This creature is dangerous, RYX warned. It can make you experience your worst fears. We will keep it contained. but you will feel its influence. Are you certain you want to proceed? Daehoon nodded. Let's do it. The Mind Ripper was released into the testing chamber, still separated by barriers, but close enough for its psychic abilities to work. Daehoon stood in the observation area, ready. The Mind Ripper's eyes glowed. Daehoon felt something brush against his mind. It was strange, invasive. Then images began to form. He saw himself on a stage, hundreds of people watching him. He had forgotten his speech. Everyone was staring at him, judging him. His mother was in the crowd, shaking her head in disappointment. Daehoon blinked. Huh? Our YX leaned forward. What do you see? Public speaking failure. Disappointing my parents. Pretty standard stuff. You are not afraid? I mean, it's unpleasant, but it's not real. It's just my brain playing tricks on me. The Mind Ripper tried harder. The images shifted. Now, Daehoon saw himself alone, forgotten, his life meaningless. No one remembered his name. He had made no difference in the world. That one stung a bit. But Daehoon took a deep breath and reminded himself that these were just thoughts. They were not real. The Mind Ripper was searching through his mind for something to grab onto, but human fears were strange. They were not about survival. They were about social anxiety, failure, and existential dread. The Mind Ripper gave up, confused. It chittered and retreated to the far corner of its chamber. Velcro stared at Daehoon. It could not frighten you. It tried, Daehoon admitted, but human fears are weird. We worry about things that won't kill us. Social embarrassment, dying without purpose, making our families disappointed. Those things feel scary to us, but they're not survival fears. Your species' separate survival fear from existential fear, our YX said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. You have intellectualized fear, made it abstract. I guess we have, Hyojin said. She was taking notes, fascinated by the commander's realization. The test continued throughout the day. Each human was exposed to different threats, different predators, different psychological triggers. The results were consistent. Humans acknowledged danger, but they did not panic. They assessed, adapted, and remained functional. By evening, Commander RYX called an end to the tests. He gathered the Draken delegation in a private meeting room. The humans were asked to wait outside. 30 minutes later, RYX emerged. He looked troubled, but also thoughtful. He approached Daehoon directly. I asked you yesterday if you were brave or foolish. I have my answer now. Oh yeah? Which one? Neither, RYX said. You are something else entirely. You are a species that has evolved beyond basic survival instincts. You think in abstract terms. You make choices based on logic and group benefit rather than individual safety. This makes you unpredictable. Is that a problem? Daehoon asked. RYX looked at him for a long moment. I do not know yet, but I do know this. If humanity decided to be hostile, you would be nearly impossible to stop. Not because you are strong, but because you do not break under pressure. You do not flee. You adapt and persist. We're not hostile, though, Daehoon said. We're just here to trade and make friends. That is what concerns me most, RYX replied. You turn predators into friends. Yesterday, Velcro's was ready to end her blood frenzy. Today, he considers you a colleague. You did not conquer him. You simply refused to be prey. And somehow that was enough. Velcro stepped forward. Commander, if I may, I think we're looking at this wrong. Humans are not a threat. They are an opportunity. They have something we lack. What is that? RYX asked. The ability to remain calm when everything around them is chaos. To think clearly when instincts scream at them to run or fight. If we could learn even a fraction of that control, imagine what we could accomplish. RYX considered this. Finally, he turned back to Daehoon. We will continue negotiations, but I want to add a new element to the trade alliance. We want exchange more than goods. We want exchange knowledge. We want to learn from you. Daehoon smiled. We can do that, and maybe you can teach us some things too. Your technology is impressive. Your culture is rich. Seems like a fair trade. RYX extended his clawed hand. It was a human gesture, one he had clearly researched. Daehoon shook it without hesitation, his small hand dwarfed by the Draken's massive one. We have a deal, RYX said. The alarm woke Daehoon from a deep sleep. It was the kind of alarm that meant something serious was happening. Red lights flashed in his quarters. The station's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Daehoon was dressed and out the door in less than 2 minutes. The corridors were filled with people and aliens moving quickly but not panicking. Station crew knew how to handle emergencies. He made his way to the central command center, where all crisis situations were coordinated. Hyojin was already there, along with Jaiwin and several station officials. Commander RYX and Velcro stood near the main display screen, their faces grim. The screen showed a planetary system 3 hours away by fast ship. What happened? Daehoon asked. A station official, a tall insect-like Vryn, answered. New Haven colony was attacked by pirates 2 hours ago. They used biological weapons. The colonists are bleeding out. Hundreds of casualties. Daehoon felt his stomach tighten. How bad? Very bad, the Vryn said. The weapon causes massive internal hemorrhaging. The medical facilities on the colony can't handle it. They need immediate evacuation and emergency medical support. Commander RYX spoke up, his voice hard. We cannot send Draken forces. The amount of blood present would trigger mass blood frenzy. My soldiers would lose control and potentially kill the very people we are trying to save. What about other species? Hyojin asked. They are sending what they can, but most military forces are days away. The colonists will die before help arrives. Daehoon looked at the screen. He saw the data scrolling past. Colony population, 2,000. Estimated casualties, 600 and climbing. Medical staff, overwhelmed. Time until critical failure. For hours. How many humans are on that colony? Daehoon asked. The Vryn checked his datapad. Approximately 300. But there are also 200 Draken civilians, along with members of 15 other species. Daehoon turned to Jaiwin. We need to go. Jaiwin nodded immediately. Agreed. How many personnel can we mobilize? There are 20 humans on this station total, Hyojin said. Most of us have some medical or emergency training. It's required for anyone who works in space. 20 people is not enough, RYX said. You would need at least 100 trained responders for a disaster of this scale. Then 20 will have to be enough, Daehoon replied. He looked at the commander. Unless you have a better idea. RYX's jaw clenched. The frustration was clear on his face. His people were dying, and his military could not help because of their own biology. It was a cruel irony. Velcro stepped forward. I want to go with them. Absolutely not. RYX said immediately. You would lose control within minutes of arriving. Maybe, Velcro said. But yesterday I maintained control around blood because of Daehoon's presence. Perhaps it will work again. That was a small amount of blood in a controlled environment. This is a massacre site. I know, Velcro said quietly. But those are my people dying down there. I have to try. RYX looked at his subordinate for a long moment. Then he turned to Daehoon. Can you do it? Can you keep him stable? Daehoon hesitated. He wanted to say yes, to be confident, but this was different from the station incident. This would be worse than anything he had experienced. I don't know, but we can try. Not good enough, RYX said. It's all we have, Daehoon countered. 20 humans and 1 Draken who might lose control, or 600 dead colonists. You do the math. RYX closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Daehoon saw something he had never seen in a Draken before. Fear. Not fear of danger, but fear of failure. Fear of being helpless. Go, RYX said finally. Save as many as you can. Within 30 minutes, the human team was assembled and loaded onto the fastest ship available. Daehoon, Hyojin, Jaiwin, Minji, and 16 other humans. Velcro's boarded last, carrying heavy equipment that would require his strength to move. His scales were already darker than normal. He was preparing himself mentally for what was coming. The flight took 2.5 hours. Hyojin spent the time organizing the team. 8 people would handle triage, sorting the wounded by severity. 6 would work as field medics, providing immediate care, would coordinate evacuations. 2, including Jaiwin, would handle security in case the pirates returned. Daehoon would lead the medical team. It was what he was trained for. Velcro sat alone at the back of the ship, his eyes closed, breathing in long control patterns. Daehoon sat down beside him. You okay? Daehoon asked. No, Velcro said honestly. I am terrified, not of the blood, of what I might do when I smell it, of becoming a monster when my people need protector. Then don't think about the blood, Daehoon said. Think about the people. Each one you help is a person saved. Focus on that. That is what you do. Yeah, when things get bad, when everything is chaos, I just focus on the next task. Help this person. Stop this bleeding. Move to the next one. Small steps. Don't think about the big picture or you'll get overwhelmed. Velcro's opened his eyes. You have done this before. Multiple times. More than I want to remember, Dae-hoon admitted. War is messy. People get hurt. You do what you can and try not to think too hard about what you can't do. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the viewport, they could see New Haven. It was a small colony world, mostly agricultural with a few mining operations. Smoke rose from several buildings. The landing zone was surrounded by wounded people lying on makeshift stretchers. Prepare for landing, the pilot announced. Dae-hoon stood up and addressed the team. Remember your training. We work fast, we work smart, and we don't stop until everyone is stable or evacuated. Stay focused. Watch each other's backs. Let go save some lives. The ship landed. The cargo door opened. The smell hit them immediately. Blood. So much blood. Velcro's froze. His scales darkened instantly, turning almost black. His pupils expanded until his eyes looked completely black. His claws extended. Every muscle in his body tensed. But he did not move forward. He did not attack. He stood there, fighting himself, his entire body shaking with the effort of maintaining control. Dae-hoon grabbed his medical kit and stepped off the ship. He did not run. He did not hesitate. He walked directly into the carnage and knelt beside the nearest wounded colonist. It was a young woman, human, bleeding from multiple wounds. Hey, Dae-hoon said calmly. I'm Dae-hoon. I'm a medic. You're going to be okay. Just stay with me. He started working. Pressure on the worst wound. Hemostatic powder to encourage clotting. Line for fluids. His hands moved automatically, trained by years of experience. Around him, the other humans spread out. Hyojin was already organizing the triage area. Minji was setting up a field hospital in an intact building. Jaiwin was coordinating with the colony's security forces. No one was panicking. No one was running. They were just working. Velcro's watched from the ship's ramp. The smell of blood was overwhelming. Every instinct screamed at him to attack, to kill, to feed the frenzy. But the humans were not running. They were wading through blood and gore like it was nothing. They were focused entirely on saving lives. Dae-hoon finished stabilizing his patient and moved to the next one. Then the next. His uniform was soaked in blood within minutes. He did not stop, did not slow down, just kept working. Velcro's took one step forward, then another. His legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. The frenzy was clawing at his mind, demanding release. But he kept watching Dae-hoon, the human's complete focus, his steady hands, his calm voice talking to each wounded person. Velcro's took another step. He was off the ship now, standing in the middle of the disaster zone. A colonist, a Draken civilian, lay nearby with a massive piece of debris pinning his legs. He was crying out in pain. Velcro's forced himself to move. He grabbed the debris. It was heavy, reinforced metal beam. He lifted it, his superior strength making the task possible. The civilian's legs were badly injured, bleeding heavily. The blood smell intensified. Velcro's vision started to narrow. The frenzy surged. Velcro's. Dae-hoon's voice cut through the red haze. I need you to hold that beam while I get him out. Can you do that? A task. A specific task. Velcro's latched onto it. Hold the beam. Just hold the beam. Yes, he managed to say. Dae-hoon slid under the beam and grabbed the injured Draken. Hyojin appeared and helped pull him free. Together, they dragged him to the triage area. Velcro's held the beam steady until they were clear, then dropped it. He stood there, breathing hard, fighting. Good work, Dae-hoon said, already moving to the next patient. There's more debris over there. People are trapped. We need your strength. Another task. Velcro's moved to the next pile of rubble. He started digging, using his claws to tear through metal and stone. Each time he uncovered someone, a human medic would rush in and start treatment. Each time, the blood smell would spike. Each time, Velcro's would focus on the next task. Hours passed. The humans worked without stopping. They were covered in blood, exhausted, running on pure determination. But they did not quit. Velcro stayed with them. He carried wounded who were too heavy for humans to lift. He moved equipment. He cleared paths through debris. And every time the frenzy threatened to overwhelm him, He would look at Daehoon or one of the other humans, see their calm focus, and find the strength to hold on. The sun was setting when they finally stabilized the last critical patient. Evacuation ships had arrived to transport the wounded to proper medical facilities. The immediate crisis was over. Velcro's collapsed. He had fought his blood frenzy for over 6 hours. It should have been impossible. He lay on the ground, every muscle burning, mentally exhausted beyond anything he had experienced before. Daehoon sat down beside him on a pile of rubble. He was covered head to toe in blood. His hands were shaking from fatigue. But he pulled out a ration bar from his pocket and started eating. "You did good," Daehoon said between bites. "Really good. A lot of people are alive because of you." Velcros could barely speak. "How do you do this? How do you function in this horror?" Daehoon looked out at the colony, at the wounded being loaded onto ships, at the humans still working, making sure everyone was stable. "Because they need us to. That's reason enough." As Velcros' eyes closed, slipping into unconscious from exhaustion, he had one final thought. Humans were not fearless. They were something more terrifying. They were unstoppable. Velcros woke up in a medical bay. For a moment, he was confused. The last thing he remembered was sitting with Daehoon on that pile of rubble. Then exhaustion had taken him. He sat up slowly. His body ached in ways he had never experienced. Fighting the blood frenzy for 6 hours had pushed him beyond every limit he thought he had. But he had done it. He had maintained control in the worst possible situation for a Draken. The door opened. Commander RYX entered, followed by 5 other high-ranking Draken. These were members of the Collective Council, the leaders of his entire species. Velcros tried to stand and salute, but his legs were too weak. "Rest," RYX said. "You have earned it." "Commander, You succeeded," RYX interrupted. "Against all probability, you maintained control in a scenario that should have been impossible. The Council has reviewed all the data from the rescue mission. We need to understand what happened." One of the Council members, an elderly female with silver scales, stepped forward. "We have analyzed the recordings. We watched you fight the frenzy for 6 continuous hours. This has never been documented in our entire history. The longest previous record was 40 minutes, and that individual was in a sealed meditation chamber, not in an active disaster zone." "I do not fully understand it myself," Velcros admitted. "The humans, they were so calm, so focused. It gave me something to hold on to. Each time I felt myself slipping, I would see Daehoon or one of the others working, and it would anchor me." Another council member spoke. "We have come to a conclusion that disturbs us. Humans are more dangerous than we initially assessed, not because of their technology or their weapons, but because of their psychology." RYX pulled up holographic displays. They showed human evolutionary history, the same information Hygen had presented days ago, but with additional analysis. "Humans evolved as pack hunters," RYX explained. "Most predatory species in the galaxy, including us, evolved as solitary or small family group hunters. We are territorial. We compete with each other for resources. Our strength comes from individual power." The display shifted to show Earth's ancient humans hunting in coordinated groups. But humans are different. They hunt in large packs. They cooperate with individuals who are not family members. They share resources with strangers. And most importantly, they prioritize the survival of the group over individual safety. The Silver Scale Council member continued. "When a Draken smells blood, our individual survival instinct triggers. We enter frenzy because in our evolutionary past, blood meant either we were injured or prey was available. Either way, our brain tells us to fight for our own survival. But humans evolved differently," RYX said. "When a human's packmate was injured and bleeding, their instinct was not to flee. It was to protect that packmate, because the pack's survival depended on keeping everyone alive. They learned to function in the presence of blood, because doing otherwise meant the entire pack would fail." Velcros understood what they were saying, but he still had questions. "How does this explain what happened to me?" "You imprinted on the human pack," the elderly female said simply. "When you saw them working together, staying calm, focus on group survival rather than individual fear, something in your mind recognized it as pack behavior. And Draken, despite being solitary hunters, still have remnants of pack instinct from earlier in our evolution. You stopped seeing yourself as a lone predator and started seeing yourself as part of their pack." Velcros thought about it. She was right. When he'd been moving debris, helping wounded, following Daehoon's instructions, he had felt like he was part of something larger than himself. The humans had not treated him as a dangerous predator. They had treated him as a teammate. This changes everything. Another council member said, "We believed we were the apex predators of the galaxy. We were wrong. Humans are not traditional predators." Our YX clarified. A single human is weak. Even their strongest individuals are no match for a Draken in combat. But humans do not function as individuals. When you face one human, you face their entire pack. They do not abandon each other. They do not flee when things become difficult. They adapt, they persist, and they turn everything around them into allies. The silver scale female looked directly at Velcros. "Tell us honestly, if you had to fight Daehoon, could you kill him?" Velcros considered the question carefully. Physically, yes. He was stronger, faster, better armed. But the thought of actually doing it made him uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. "I do not want to fight him. He is a packmate now." "Exactly," she said. "In less than a week, humans turned you from a potential threat into an ally. They did not conquer you. They did not bribe you. They simply refused to see you as a predator. And somehow that was enough to make you see them as equals." Our YX deactivated the holographic display. "The Council has made a decision. We want a formal alliance with humanity. Not just a trade agreement, but a true alliance. We want to learn from them, and we want them to learn from us. Together, we could be something unprecedented in galactic history." "What about the other species?" Velcros asked. "How will they react?" "They're already reacting," our YX said. "News of the rescue mission has spread. 20 humans and 1 Draken saved over 500 lives in conditions that should have been impossible. Other species are taking notice. Some are impressed. Others are frightened." The elderly female added, "We must be the first to formalize this alliance. If we do not, someone else will. And we would rather have humans as partners than have them as someone else's partners." 2 days later, a formal ceremony was held on Haven's Edge Station. Representatives from dozens of species attended. The main hall was packed with dignitaries, traders, and curious observers. Daehoon stood at the center podium with Commander RYX. He was wearing a clean uniform, though he would have preferred his regular clothes. Beside them stood Hyojin, Minji, Jaiwan, and Velcros. RYX spoke first, his voice amplified throughout the hall. "Today marks a new chapter for the Draken Collective. We have encountered a species that challenges everything we thought we knew about strength, courage, and survival. Humans have shown us that true power comes not from individual might, but from unbreakable cooperation and the refusal to abandon those who need help." He turned to Daehoon. "We thought we were apex predators. We were wrong. Humans are not predators in the traditional sense. They are survivors who turn everything, even predators like us, into family. I am honored to announce a formal alliance between the Draken Collective and humanity." The hall erupted in mixed reactions. Some species applauded. Others looked concerned. A few seemed calculating, already thinking about what this alliance meant for galactic politics. Daehoon stepped up to speak. He had not prepared a fancy speech. That was not his style. "Thank you, Commander RYX. I think I can speak for humans when I say we're just as honored. We've learned a lot from the Draken these past few days. You're strong, you're honorable, and you're willing to push past your own limitations to help others. That's exactly the kind of people we want as partners." He looked around the hall at all the different species watching. Humans are not looking to dominate anyone. We are not interested in conquest or control. We just want to build good relationships, share knowledge, and help where we can. If other species want to join us in that goal, we will welcome them. But we will not compromise on our values. We protect our packmates. Always. Minji stepped forward with a datapad. Hyojin did the same on the Draken side. They displayed the formal alliance documents for everyone to see. The terms were fair, balanced, and focused on mutual benefit. Trade agreements, scientific exchanges, joint colony projects, and mutual defense pacts. RYX and Daehoon signed the documents together. The alliance was official. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the station's common area. The same common area where this had all started days ago with a bloody stake and a confused Draken. Daehoon found a quiet corner and sat down with a plate of food. Real food this time, prepared by the station's chefs. He was tired. The past few days had been intense, and he was looking forward to some rest before his next cargo run. Velcros approached and sat beside him. Other species in the room gave them space. The sight of a human and a Draken sitting together peacefully was still unusual enough to draw attention. "I want to thank you," Velcro said quietly. "For what?" Daehoon asked between bites. "For showing me a different way to exist. Before I met you, I thought strength meant fighting my instincts alone. But you taught me that real strength is knowing when to accept help, when to be part of something larger than yourself. Daehoon smiled. You figured that out on your own. I just happened to be eating lunch at the right time. It was more than that, and you know it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Hyojin, Minji, and Jaiwon joined them, carrying their own plates. Sungo arrived moments later with drinks for everyone. More humans started filtering into the area. Then, surprisingly, more Draken. Velcro's squad mates, curious about the humans who had changed their colleagues so much. Soon the corner was filled with both species, talking, sharing stories, and learning about each other. Other species watched from a distance, trying to understand what they were seeing. A pack forming across species lines. Predators and prey, traditionally defined, sitting together as equals. Daehoon looked around at the growing group and felt something settle in his chest. This was right. This was what humans did best. Not conquering or dominating, but building bridges, turning strangers into friends and friends into family. Velcros watched the same scene with different eyes. He saw humans naturally drawing others into their pack, making everyone feel welcome, breaking down barriers that other species thought were permanent. And he realized the council had been right to be concerned, not because humans were violent or aggressive, but because they were irresistibly cooperative. In a galaxy where most species competed for resources and territory, humans offered something different: partnership, loyalty, the promise that if you joined their pack, they would never abandon you no matter how bad things got. It was a powerful offer, maybe the most powerful force in the galaxy. Daehoon cut into another piece of steak. It was cooked medium rare, blood still visible on his plate. Velcros watched and felt no frenzy, no rage, just acceptance. The human was eating. It was normal. It was safe. How do you take your steak? Daehoon asked, offering him a piece. Velcros considered. I am not certain. I have never shared a meal with prey before. Well, first mistake is still calling me prey, Daehoon said with a grin. I'm your packmate now. So how do packmates take their steak? Velcros felt something warm spread through his chest. Pride, maybe, or belonging. The same way as the rest of the pack, I suppose. Medium rare it is, Daehoon said, cutting another piece. As the evening continued and the crowd grew larger, word spread through the station and eventually beyond. The predator dragon and the human, sharing a meal, not as enemies, not as rivals, but as family. And across the galaxy, other species began to wonder, if humans could turn draken into packmates, what else could they do? Who else might they welcome into their strange, relentless, unstoppable pack? The answer, as it turned out, was everyone who was willing to try.